Africa brings nothing but problems. Sheikh Khalid spat, his jeweled cufflinks glinting under the chandelier light. The boardroom fell into uneasy silence. Eyes darted toward Ibrahim Traoré, waiting for the young president to flinch. He didn't. The room itself was a monument to wealth. Marble floors reflected golden light from a crystal chandelier. A polished mahogany table stretched like a runway, lined with men in tailored suits worth more than most families' yearly income. Waiters in white gloves glided at the edges, refilling coffee cups and sliding plates of dates onto silver trays. Every detail whispered extravagance and exclusion. At the head of the table sat Sheikh Khalid al-Mansour, a man whose reputation preceded him. He was in his late 50s, silver in his beard, his black thobe pressed so perfectly it gleamed. Diamonds glimmered on his watch and cufflinks. His fortune, built on oil and real estate, had made him one of the most powerful magnates in the Gulf. But power had turned his smile into a sneer. Across from him, calm and upright, sat Ibrahim Traoré, the young president of Burkina Faso. No jeweled cufflinks, no designer tie. He wore a simple navy suit, pressed but modest, with a plain silver watch on his wrist. The contrast was almost theatrical, the soldier-turned-leader facing the tycoon. The insult Khalid had hurled was still, hanging in the air like smoke after a gunshot. The other investors shifted uncomfortably. Richard Collins, the British oil executive, glanced down at his papers, pretending to read, though the words blurred before him. Omar Rahman, the young Emirati investor, leaned back slightly, his eyes narrowing, curious to see what would follow. At the corner, Fatima Zahra, Khalid's assistant, lowered her gaze, her fingers brushing her phone as if instinctively wanting to capture the moment. Khalid leaned forward, unbothered by the tension he'd created. "Your continent has always been chaos," he continued, his voice thick with disdain. "Coups, corruption, hunger, poverty. What do you expect us to believe? That you can sit here and talk about development as if Africa leads the world?" He let out a sharp laugh, the kind that invited others to join. A few did, their chuckles half-hearted, forced. The sound bounced awkwardly off the marble. Ibrahim did not move. His hands rested lightly on the table, his gaze steady on the sheikh. He neither smiled nor frowned. His stillness was unsettling, a soldier's stillness, forged not in boardrooms, but on front lines, in dust and heat, where arrogance didn't win battles, discipline did. The silence stretched. Someone coughed. A waiter froze mid-step, tray in hand, unwilling to make a sound. The chandelier's crystal pendants trembled faintly with the hum of the air conditioning. Richard Collins tried to cut the tension with a forced smile. "Well, Sheikh Khalid, I'm sure President Traoré," but Khalid lifted a hand, silencing him. "No. Let him answer for himself. Let him tell us what Africa truly brings to the table." His eyes glinted, sharp, predatory. Ibrahim inhaled slowly, his chest rising beneath the plain suit. He glanced once around the room, at Omar's curious stare, Richard's discomfort, Fatima's lowered eyes, and then back at Khalid. He did not rush. He did not stumble over words. In fact, he said nothing at all for a moment, letting the silence turn the insult against its speaker. Omar felt it, the shift. The young investor, unlike the others, had read about Ibrahim. He knew this was not just another African delegate begging for contracts. This was a man who had risen from the barracks to lead a nation, a man whose people saw him as a symbol of pride. Omar's lips parted slightly. He leaned forward. Fatima, still staring down at her phone, felt her pulse quicken. Something about the president's composure unsettled her. Without thinking, she slid her thumb across the screen, opening the camera. The meeting was supposed to be private, but instinct told her this moment would matter. Khalid smirked, mistaking Ibrahim's silence for hesitation. "Nothing to say?" he pressed. Or perhaps there is nothing to defend. You speak of progress, but progress speaks no African tongue. That last line drew a few more chuckles. This time, Ibrahim moved. Slowly, deliberately, he leaned forward, resting his forearms on the polished mahogany. His voice, when it came, was low and steady, cutting clean through the murmurs. "Sheikh Khalid," he said softly, "be careful with words. They reveal more about the speaker than the one they are aimed at." The boardroom stilled again. Khalid's smirk faltered, only slightly. Ibrahim straightened in his chair. His presence seemed to expand, not through volume, but through gravity. "You ask what Africa brings," he continued. "Today perhaps I should show you." His hand brushed the glass of water before him. He paused, letting the moment linger. Then, in perfect Arabic, clear and fluent, he said, "Development is not born from wealth alone. It is born from knowledge, discipline, and respect." The words rolled across the table, smooth and precise. Khalid blinked. The smirk slipped a little further. Around the table, heads turned, eyes widening. Omar's breath caught in his throat. Richard shifted in his seat, suddenly aware that this meeting had taken a turn, and Fatima, phone now recording discreetly on her lap, felt a chill run down her spine. Ibrahim's lips curved faintly, not in a smile but in resolve. "You see," he said quietly, "languages carry truth, and I speak more than one." He placed the glass back on the table with care, the sound of it meeting wood sharp in the silence. The insult that had started the meeting was still in the air, but now it was trembling. The magnate who had thrown it sat frozen, cufflinks catching. The chandelier's glow, but his authority suddenly dimmed, and Ibrahim Traoré, the young soldier president, was only just beginning. For a moment, no one breathed. The cadence of Ibrahim's Arabic still vibrated in the boardroom air, sharper than the crystal edges of the chandelier above them. Sheikh Khalid shifted in his chair, the smirk gone, though he tried to mask the flicker of surprise behind narrowed eyes. Ibrahim leaned back slightly, his expression calm. "But Arabic," he said softly, "is only one key." Straightened, his voice shifting seamlessly into French, crisp and deliberate. "La dignité d'une nation ne dépend pas de sa richesse matérielle, mais de sa capacité à croire en elle-même et à se développer." The dignity of a nation does not depend on material wealth, but on its ability to believe in itself and to develop. Richard Collins blinked. French rolled from Ibrahim's tongue like a native speaker. Richard glanced at the man's plain silver watch as though searching for some clue, something to explain what he was witnessing. Before the thought could settle, Ibrahim turned his gaze directly toward Richard. In flawless English, he continued, "And development is not a gift granted by others. It is a responsibility, a burden, and a blessing, carried by those who dare to build." Richard's mouth went dry. The words hit him squarely, as if meant for him alone. He realized they were. The investors exchanged glances, unease blooming into something else. Attention. Ibrahim didn't pause. His tone sharpened as he flowed into Russian, the consonants crisp, the rhythm unhesitant. Сила страны измеряется не только оружием, но и знаниями, которые она передает своим детям. The strength of a country is measured not only by its weapons, but by the knowledge it passes to its children. The room murmured. Omar Rahman sat forward, elbows resting on the table now, his earlier curiosity igniting into admiration. He had never heard Russian spoken with such fluidity outside Moscow. Then came Mandarin. Ibrahim's voice softened, the syllables lilting, yet firm. 知识是财富，尊重是力量. Knowledge is wealth, respect is power. Phones shifted quietly around the table. Investors who had smirked minutes before were now recording discreetly, unwilling to miss what had become a performance unlike any other. Fatima, still filming from her lap, felt her throat tighten. This wasn't just a rebuttal. This was history, shaping itself in real time. Ibrahim's voice hold on, switching now into Portuguese. A verdadeira independência nasce quando aprendemos a cultivar a terra, educar nossos filhos e respeitar nossa cultura. True independence is born when we learn to cultivate the land, educate our children, and respect our culture. Then Spanish, warm and firm. La arrogancia divide a los hombres, pero el respeto los une. Arrogance divides men, but respect unites them. The atmosphere thickened. Khalid sat rigid, his fingers tightening around the armrest of his velvet chair. The laughter that had filled the room minutes earlier was now a memory no one wished to acknowledge. Ibrahim's voice shifted again, this time into German, precise as a blade. Wahrer Fortschritt entsteht nicht durch Spott, sondern durch Zusammenarbeit. Unwissen. True progress is not born from ridicule, but from cooperation and knowledge. The chandelier's glow seemed brighter now, as though the room itself leaned into his words. Finally, Ibrahim paused. His gaze swept the table, meeting. Every pair of eyes, Omar's widened with respect, Richard's clouded with reflection, Fatima's shimmering with disbelief. Even Khalid's, though defiant, betrayed a crack, the faintest glimmer of unease. And then, with a breath steady as stone, Ibrahim spoke in Moray, his mother tongue. A tree does not grow tall by mocking the roots of others. It grows tall because it digs deep, drinks deeply, and reaches for the sky. The sound was melodic, unfamiliar to most in the room, but it needed no translation. The weight of it, the cadence, the conviction, carried its own meaning. Silence fell. Not the tense silence of mockery, but the heavy silence of revelation. Ibrahim folded his hands, his voice now back in English, low and even. You asked what Africa brings to the table. It brings resilience. It brings culture. It brings a youth that is unafraid to learn every language of the world and still speak proudly in its own. Africa brings solutions, not problems, and today, it asks not for charity, but for partnership. The investors sat motionless. The sheikh, once towering in arrogance, looked suddenly smaller in his velvet chair, his cufflinks no longer glinting with triumph, but with discomfort. Omar was, the first to breathe out, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Richard shifted uncomfortably, guilt flashing in his eyes. Fatima's recording continued, her heart racing. This was no longer a private meeting. This was history captured, alive, waiting to explode beyond these gilded walls. And as the weight of Ibrahim's words settled over them, none in the room yet realized. The world outside was already watching. The silence was fragile, like glass stretched thin. No one dared move first. Then from the far end of the table, the faint sound of a phone vibrated. Heads turned, not toward Khalid, not toward Ibrahim, but toward Fatima Zahra. Her cheeks flushed as she quickly silenced it, but the truth was already out. On her lap, her screen showed the live stream still running, red dot blinking. She had started recording instinctively at the moment of Khalid's insult. Somehow, with a trembling thumb, she had hit Go Live. The counter on her screen told the story. 15,000 viewers. 28,000. 46,000. The numbers were climbing like wildfire. Omar leaned toward her, eyes widening. Is this? She nodded quickly, whispering. The world is watching. Khalid heard. It. His face stiffened. End it, he snapped. Now! But it was too late. Clips were already being shared, hashtags forming, translations appearing in real time across Twitter, TikTok, and news feeds. The insult, the silence, the cascade of 9 languages, It was all streaming beyond the gilded walls of that Dubai. Boardroom, into cafes in Ouagadougou, classrooms in Paris, taxis in New York, villages in Ghana. Ibrahim, however, did not flinch. He had not raised his voice, had not demanded the stage, yet somehow it was his. He turned slightly, his calm gaze sweeping the table once more. "You see," he said, his English carrying the weight of quiet thunder, "knowledge is not a trophy for the wealthy. It is the weapon of the humble, and Africa has learned to sharpen it, despite centuries of doubt, exploitation, and arrogance." Omar felt a chill down his spine. He glanced toward Khalid, whose fists were now clenched on the armrest, his authority eroded not by force, but by truth. Ibrahim continued, each word measured like a step across stone. "We do not come here to beg. We do not come here to be mocked. We come here because the world must understand. Africa's development is not a dream. It is a duty. We will cultivate our land. We will educate our children. We will speak every language needed to claim our seat, not as beggars, but as builders." Richard Collins exhaled slowly, guilt carving into him. He had smirked earlier, complicit in Khalid's laughter. Now he could not meet Ibrahim's eyes. He thought of the oil contracts, the boardroom games, the quiet belief that Africa was always a client, never a partner. That belief had just been shattered before him. Fatima's phone buzzed again. 250,000 live viewers, 480,000. The chat scrolled with fire. "Respect from Morocco. This man speaks for all of Africa." Khalid embarrassed himself. "History is happening." Khalid slammed a palm against the table. "This meeting is private," he barked. "Cut the feed." But his voice was drowned, not by sound, but by silence. No one obeyed. The investors who had once leaned toward him were now leaning toward Ibrahim. Even Fatima, trembling, did not stop recording. Ibrahim rose slowly from his chair. He was not tall compared to Khalid, not dressed in velvet, not shining with diamonds. But as he stood, the room itself seemed to rise with him. He placed both palms on the table, steady and firm. His voice deepened, resonant, unwavering. "Arrogance," he said, "is loud, but dignity is louder." He let the words hang, and then softer, with the cadence of a prayer. "Remember this. Africa does not need laughter. It needs respect. It does not need pity. It needs partnership, and it does not need permission. It will rise, with or without you." The chandelier above seemed to tremble in agreement. For a moment, no one moved. Then Omar Rahman stood, his chair scraping lightly against the marble. He clapped once, twice, then with steady rhythm. The sound cracked the silence. Richard Collins followed, his palms meeting, his expression sober now. One by one, others joined, until the boardroom echoed not with laughter but with applause, raw, uncontainable, thunderous. Khalid sat stone still, his face flushed with fury and humiliation. His jeweled cufflinks no longer glowed with pride, they glared like chains. He had come to dominate the meeting. Instead, he had been silenced by a soldier in a plain navy suit. Outside the walls, the applause was multiplied 1,000-fold. News. Alerts flashed. African leader's multilingual speech stuns Dubai. Burkina Faso president schools shake. 9 languages, 1 truth. Respect. By nightfall, the clip had reached 20 million views. In Lagos, youth marched with signs reading, "Africa speaks every language." In Cairo, students replayed his Arabic line, proud to claim him as a brother in tongue. In New York, commentators compared him to Mandela. In Ouagadougou, his people cheered in the streets, chanting his name. Ibrahim, meanwhile, walked quietly from the boardroom, his steps unhurried, his posture straight. He did not gloat. He did not turn back to see Khalid's face. For him, the victory was not the humiliation of a magnate, but the reminder that dignity, spoken with clarity, could echo louder than wealth. As he reached the door, he paused once, glancing at Fatima, whose hands still clutched the phone. She looked up, eyes wide, breath caught. He gave her a single nod, a silent acknowledgement. Then he pushed the door open and stepped into the corridor, the applause still thundering behind him. The narrator's voice would have spoken it best. Arrogance mocks, dignity teaches, and in the end, truth speaks every language.